So, welcome to another show. So, today we have Jack Decker on, who is the author of the book, The State's First Amendment. So, thank you for being on the show, Jack.
Thank you for having me on.
So, the State's First Amendment, very different to the Constitution's First Amendment, isn't it?
Yes, yes. The First Amendment deals with a very important, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. But my amendment has nothing to do with the First Amendment. Not really.
So,
It's more about states' rights. It has more to do with the Tenth Amendment, which is whatever powers not laid out in the Constitution is reserved for the states and the individual. That's basically my amendment would have more impact on that amendment.
so why is that so important to you that so states and individuals can have more control? Is it rather than a more centralized power?
Well, um, when my country was started, we were a colony of the UK. Uh, Actually, we were 13 counties of the UK. We were not um, a single body at that time. You did not view us as you called us the American colonies, but each county was a separate county as far as you guys were concerned. Um, when we separated from you, we were not that happy with centralized power, and so we didn't want to have a single entity determining everything, and we want to have more powers to the states. And um, when our country was founded, we ran under what's called the Articles of Confederation, which was actually the first constitution of the U.S. And the states were very loosely connected together. We actually had tariffs. We had import restrictions between the colonies. Um, the Revolutionary War Army had to beg for supplies and money from the states, and they could give whatever they wanted or not give at all. And that caused a problem. And then after the revolution was won, we had what's called the Shaw Rebellion, SHAY, and it was over taxation within one state and showed further weakness of the federal government. And so the founding fathers met again and created what we now call the U.S. Constitution. Um, and then they also met that's kind of like the the mechanical manual for our country, and so they just focused on that part, and then they all agreed that they were going to meet again for to deal with what rights were going to be embedded into the Constitution. That's what we call the Bill of Rights. And so they met a second time to determine what the Bill of Rights was. That's where the First Amendment came about. That's where the 10th Amendment came about. All the amendments that you hear an American say, that's where those amendments are actually is in the Bill of Rights. Our founding fathers wanted a very limited federal government, and that's how our country operated for 100 years. This is when the economy of America just absolutely exploded. Um, but from the very beginning, there were people that wanted a very powerful centralized government, and there was people that wanted the powers to be more with the states, more confederation based. In our country's history, there's two individuals that kind of, epitomize these two different approaches. Because of a musical, you guys might actually know of one of them, which was Alexander Hamilton. That's a current musical that's going around. He exemplified centralized power. He created the first national bank. It was abolished twice. Last time under Andrew Jackson, and then there was Thomas Jefferson, and he represented the anti-federalists. Alexander Hamilton, Federalist, centralized power; anti-federalist, Thomas Jefferson. And for 100 years, we operated this way. We had a Supreme Court that every time the Federalists got a law passed through Congress and signed by the president, they would strike it down. No, that's not in the Constitution. No, that's not in the Constitution. Just one time after another time after another time. Um, Cartoons in America about how often there's skeet shooting. A bill comes up and the Supreme Court go, Next one. 100 years after our founding, finally the Federalists, the pro-centralized power advocates, got a Supreme Court that agreed with their warped interpretation of two clauses in our Constitution. One was called the General Welfare Clause, the other one was called the Commerce Clause. And that enabled then the federal government to basically now stick their fingers into everything in the country that it wants to. The states are constantly fighting to maintain what little power they still possess. The Federalists are constantly coming in, trying to take those powers away. Right now, you're seeing in America, I'm not sure how much coverage it gets in your country, but there's a battle between the state of Texas and the federal government over the border. Our president of the United States, a lot of people wonder what he's doing. The Democrats, I don't want to be partisan, and I'm not. I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Republican. In my country, there are two political parties. There's a Republican Party and there's a Democratic Party. I'm not a member of either one. I'm a member of the Libertarian Party, a third party.
Is libertarian in some way anarchism to an extent?
No. That
Are there
we
any
are fellow
similarities though?
travelers. We are fellow travelers, but we have very different end goals. An anarchist wants no government at all. I think personally, I think it is as realistic as communism is. Depends. Everyone's going to be good. Okay. Everyone's going to be nice. No, there's not going to be things like be bad men in either of those cases. Communism fails because it's basically slackerism. Slackerism killed communism. Our anarchy would just bring about the rule of gangs. Might make right. Libertarians want minimum government, maximum liberty. We want government as being as small as possible. We consider that taxation is theft, that taxation is extortion, but that is a necessary evil because there's a role for government to protect our rights and our property. And there's a debate on though how much it shrinks down. There are anarchist capitalists, basically, and that's what you see in Argentina. Milei, Milei, is that how you pronounce his name? The new president of Argentina. He's an anarcho-capitalist. What they believe is that there should not be any government employees at all, that the government should exist, but should outsource everything to private sectors that it has to do, but it has a very libertarian role, but it has a very what the federal government does do, they outsource the private sector. That's the difference between and there are libertarians who are anarcho-capitalists. They're one and the same. You can be a libertarian and be an anarcho-capitalist. You can be both. It's just whether or not you think that an anarcho-capitalist would outsource all of government to the private sector that the government should do, but what it should do, it should be very limited. So, but an anarchist wants no government, free range citizens. In an ideal, perfect world, I would totally agree with that. I consider an anarchist to be the ultimate optimist, and it's nice to think that there are people who think that mankind is that kind, KIND, but I'm not that kind. So
yeah, no. So it's true as well because idealistically you would think, oh, there needs to be no government. We're all sort of equal, equity, equality, all of that sort of stuff. But I heard something the other day and it really made you think. if let's say there was an aeroplane crash and we all landed on a desert island, how long do you think it would be before some level of government was created to make sure that everyone was for the best of
Instantly,
our society?
instantly.
You know, what are your expertise? What are your expertise? You know, how much you bring to the table? What's everyone going to do? And who's going to be in charge of that? Who's the most sensible and the most intelligent, etc. That's good. And it's just naturally something that will happen. So I'm in agreement. I
Yeah,
think there is a need
we
for
will
some level
we
of
will self
government.
in that situation. We'd automatically self-organize. Very, very likely, what would happen is that um, the first thing would be protection. You're on the island. There'd have to be scouting parties because you could have wild animals, wild boars. Boars do not take kindly to anybody. And then you'd have to have guys and it would be guys. The idea that women are going to provide defense is just a feminist fantasy.
Yeah,
They
gender
would
roles would
sharpen
quickly come
spears.
back, wouldn't they? Gender roles would quickly
Oh yeah,
come back.
they're coming back now. It's just um, feminism is a luxury of civilized society.
Yeah,
It,
100%.
it, it is.
Do you know
Yeah,
who
it's
that
just
comedian is? Andrew Schultz, the American comedian. He said something along the lines of, quite funny actually. He said, "Oh,
what?
feminists timed the fight for equality amazingly. Not when the wars were happening, but now we've got air conditioned offices and all this sort of stuff. They want equal rights, but as soon as another war comes, they'll be like, yeah, you go ahead. We'll just, look after the kids, etc." So he's quite funny with it.
Yeah, yeah. When the ship sinks, it's all of a sudden becomes women and children first, you know. you know, but it's also the role. I mean, we will you look at like I don't know how we want to get into this, but I have a degree in psychology and social psychology, so I'm fascinated by watching people. And I was watching trans people before they became popular in the city called Madison, Wisconsin. And you watch how trans actually work when they're threatened. You see who they really are. The male that's under delusion that she's female will respond with a fight. The female who's under delusion that she is male will flee, um, and it just becomes apparent. And so it's just I don't know if you want us to go down that. I'm willing to talk about anything you'd like to talk
Yeah,
about.
same. I mean, it's
Um,
funny. It's funny though because they say, "Oh, there's more than two genders," yet they want to swap from one to the other. So it's quite
yeah,
funny.
it's amazing also that they say there's more than two genders, and that you can be your gender and be another gender, and yet they say gender affirming care means us cutting out parts of your body to affirm that. But I thought we could be any gender. We didn't have to have those parts taken off to be that gender.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
just it's a fad. It's a fad.
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
just like LGBTQ whatever. The anything beyond B, okay, is just a fad. And I don't think people truly understand what Q is. I think when they find out what Q is, they'll be like, oh shit, no. And don't have that shit anywhere close to our kids. And that's where in America, that's drawing the line, is where you see their real intentions and they want to go after the kids. They want to have kids who, is in our country, the Democrats don't believe that you can be responsible enough to own a gun. Okay. But they think that, and they don't think adults are responsible enough to own a gun, but they think that kids are responsible enough to cut off parts of their body before they even hit
Yeah,
puberty.
this is it.
That's just
This is
it's
coming back to
just
what you said
it's a
earlier
fad.
about the centralized
It's just a
government.
fad.
The biggest problem I've got, and I'm all for, to an extent, decentralizing power, because if you've got, huge amounts of power, you can do things against the will of other people for your own benefit. The problem is, though, is that once you've got a level of power, it's very difficult to try and for us as peasants of society to an extent, claw some of that power back. It's very difficult.
Well,
And
here's the thing. I can um just to briefly explain what my amendment is about, it creates a new politician in our country. It makes currently there are only federal politicians, state politicians, county politicians, and it goes all the way down municipal politicians or school board politicians, and they only affect their level of government. And so, to a federal politician, what the problem I believe a country has is that to a federal politician, for them to infect anything in the country, it has to be through a federal law. So it's like the old saying, to a hammer, all problems are nails. To a federal politician, all problems are federal problems because they want to have impact. You're a politician, you want to have impact. That's why you became a politician, and that's how you get reelected. You don't get reelected by saying, "Oh, I did nothing." I did nothing in Congress. You say, "Oh, here's what I did. Here's what this I did." But that's caused the problem. That's why there was centralized power people in our federal government that wanted to have a warped reading of the Commerce Clause and Welfare Clause, so that the federal government, the U.S. Supreme Court, eventually agreed with them after 100 years, and that's just so that they can have impact. My amendment basically creates a new politician. There's both a federal and a state politician. It takes the U.S. Senate and gets rid of it, in a way.
So
All the
just
current
to,
US
just to confirm, because from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not hugely abreast with US politics, but it's House, Senate, and Congress, aren't there? Is that the three parts of the American system?
Well, it is judiciary, Supreme Court, executive, U.S. president, and then there's Congress. And Congress, when it was being formed, the southern states wanted to have it be representation by state. The northern states, because they were most populous, they wanted to be representation by population. And Benjamin Franklin, really smart guy at the time, came in and says, well, why don't we have both? So we have the U.S. Senate that represents the states, and the U.S. House of Representatives that represents the population. And they divide up the powers even there. The U.S. House of Representatives has the biggest power, which is called the power of the purse. That's where all the federal budgets come out of, is the U.S. House. And kind of like giving them something, you don't have the power purse. The U.S. Senate, the president can nominate members to the Supreme Court. The U.S. Senate approves them. The president can sign a treaty. The Senate approves the treaty. The Senate, the president, there's another one. But basically, the confirmation, like ambassadors, the president can propose and nominate an ambassador. The Senate approves the ambassador. The Senate is more of the long-term part of the Congress, because they're elected every 6 years, and the House of Representatives kind of is called keeping their fingers on the pulse of America. All of them are reelected every 2 years, and so excuse me. My amendment would bring the Congress into our age, into the 21st century. It makes us, and right now we can telecommute, which wasn't possible back when the country was founded. The fastest communication was horse and ship back when the country was founded. Now, look what we're doing now. You're in England, okay? I'm in America, and we're having an instantaneous conversation. I'm just bringing Congress into the 21st century. I'm enabling Congress to telecommute. So now I'm taking each state has two U.S. senators. I'm sending them back to the states. I'm taking the U.S. House of Representatives, eliminating all of them, as I did with the senators, and moving them back to the states. I'll give you this. What in the Senate, each state gets 2 votes. I enable them to telecommute. So what are they doing back there? I say instead, why don't we just make the governor, who's the head of the state, have those 2 votes in the U.S. Senate. So in other words, it'll be just 1 vote. The Senate will go from 100 members to 50 members, 1 for each state. Okay, the governor will have that vote. Governors are very much aware of what the federal government does extremely aware because it impacts whatever they do at the states. At the House of Representatives, we have if you were states are divided up how many votes they get in the House of Representatives by their population. California has a lot, I think it's 53. Wyoming has one because but every state at least has one, at least one vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. So let's say a state had 10 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives. Their state assembly, which is their kind of like their House of Representatives on the state level, representing the population of their state within the state for the state government, has 100 members. I take that 100 members and divide that into 10, and so each one would get 0.1% of a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. So I get rid of the current U.S. senators, I get rid of the current House of Representatives, and I give those votes to the state politicians. I believe because of that, now they have politicians who can vote for both federal laws and state laws. I think that's where the states are going to start saying there's a lot of duplication between the federal government and the state governments. The federal government has a Department of Transportation. Every state has a Department of Transportation. The federal government has a Commerce Department. Every state has a Commerce Department. There's only three federal departments in the United States that the states do not duplicate. In a way, that's the Department of Defense, that's State Department, which we actually, it's not about the states. The State Department is our diplomacy department, and then there's the Treasury, the people that print the money. All other federal departments have their corresponding departments at the state level. So now that I've made you, let's say I make you a state assembly member in the state of Wisconsin, my home state. You represent both your district at the state level and at the federal level. There are two bills coming in. Okay, one's a federal bill and one's a state bill. Again, remember I said politicians like to have an impact? Well, where would you have more impact? If your state assembly has 100 members, and you're part of it, or you're part of the federal House of Representatives, and by me giving all those votes to all the state assembly members, that would make there 5,462 members of the U.S. House of Representatives.
But if just a question, and again, just to test my understanding, if these representatives are then responsible for two levels essentially, does that not centralize power rather than decentralize power?
No, it does the opposite. Well, it will centralize power. I believe it will centralize power in the federal government that the federal government is best able to do, such as national defense, such as international diplomacy, such as printing the U.S. dollar. Although at one time, every state had their own currency. Okay. But counterfeiting was rampant. I don't know if you guys know, it's called the Secret Service, the U.S. Secret Service. They protected the president when he's there. Well, one of their duties is actually counterfeiting, and they still do it today. They go on out and arrest people who are counterfeiting the currency. That was their original purpose of the Secret Service, was going after counterfeiters. They're protecting the president was kind of an add-on. Oh, hey, we've had an assassination attempt. Oh yeah, someone killed the president. Maybe we should protect this guy. That was Lincoln.
So what do you think with the JFK situation? Then now you've mentioned the killing of presidents. Think it was as an inside job, or was it Harvey Oswald? Do you think?
I think it was Harvey Oswald. I think it is. If it's a conspiracy, it's funner to think that's a conspiracy theory than it was simply a lone pathetic person killing someone that had training. He was a lucky shot. It was just if you saw the situation, I don't think it was conspiracy at all. I mean, reality. It's fun to watch the movies where they think it is. Just like the Da Vinci Code, but there's no Da Vinci Code. Conspiracy theories are fun to go into like a movie, but I don't always when a simpler explanation makes it possible is Occam razor. you know let's just, if a simpler
Yeah.
explanation explains it, then that's probably what it really was. And it's a lone actor. um I don't think there's grand conspiracy. uh but anyways, so I think that because of that, if my man was added, um you'd have a situation where as you as a state assembly member would have more impact at the state level than at the federal level, because at the state level you're only 1 out of 100, where at the national level, my amendment, you are 1 out of 5,462. And also for the governors, for their power, at a governor they have a lot of power in state politics, but at the federal level they would still be 1 of 50. So is you are the state governor or you're 1 of 50. And so I think it would just naturally um cause the governments that can be done at the state level to be done at the state level. But even at the federal level, we have, every state has a National Guard. And the National Guard is kind of a misleading term because it's actually a state guard, because the head of the National Guard is actually the governor. And right now we're having a contentious situation here in America between Texas and the federal government over the border. The federal government does not want to police the border. Texas does. And Texas is not putting up with the shenanigans of the Democratic Party, because what it's doing is when the illegals come over, they're shipping it to all the Democratic states. Oh, you don't want us to protect our border? Oh, you're a sanctuary state? You're a sanctuary city? Okay, we're not taking care of these people that are coming over. We're sending them to you because you just want to have them. You say they're fine. You think that they're great. They're great for our economy. Okay, here is all this. And I think that's a wake-up call, right? Chicago is, we're a sanctuary city. You can see, watch videos. We accept all illegal immigrants. You're not illegal. You're just coming here. Then Texas started sending the illegal immigrants to Chicago. Now they're freaking out. They're like, oh, what do we do with all these people? Well, that's what Texas has had to deal with forever. We're giving you how the border states are dealing with it. But right now, that is a contentious issue between the federal government and the state governments. Would my amendment affect that? No. It would give more power to the states. Okay. There would not be I don't think there would be as much of an issue with Texas enforcing their own border.
So what
But you
rules?
see,
So what rules can't states control? What sort of rules is there that happen
well,
above and beyond states?
with my creation of a federal and state politician, in a way they are one and the same. These two have to deal with federal issues. They have to deal with state issues. The federal issues don't go away. The state issues don't go away.
Fiscal stuff like the Fed as well, or not?
Sorry, what?
Does it include like financial issues, like such as the Fed and setting things like that, or is it just sort of other rules, not necessarily financial rules as well?
Okay, there are a lot in America. There's a lot of financial rules. If it's about the Treasury, about the U.S. currency,
Yeah.
that would be handled. I think it takes our government as it is now and changes it. I don't think there would be enough support at the state levels to have state currencies again, because it would have to be an agreement with all the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, basically state assembly members and governors saying, hey, we want to create our own currency. And all the states, at least the majority of them, would have to agree that a state can have their own currency. I don't think they would ever agree with that.
No.
Because there's
sorry, I didn't mean that they would have their own currency. What I'm saying is that, okay, you've made these changes, you've made states more accountable to themselves essentially. But there is still above the United States the Federal Reserve, which, because it controls the money supply, has an impact on all of the states. Would any of your rulings affect that power dynamic? Is where I'm basically going with this.
Well, with the Federal Reserve, there's a lot of people in the country that wants to get rid of it. The Federal Reserve is not part of the federal government. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It was
Yeah.
created in the shadows. It is what has devalued our currency. A dollar when it was created in 1913 is worth 3 cents today. That's purchasing power,
Yeah, it's because of
and
the
that's
President Nixon,
that.
wasn't it? He took it off the gold standard, the dollar.
Well, this is
81.
this before Nixon. This is way back in Coolidge. Um, that's when they met and created the Federal Reserve. But what it has done is devalued the American dollar. There's a lot of calls of getting rid of it. There's no reason for the Federal Reserve, except for printing money, out of thin air, and that has devalued our money. And there's a lot of countries that actually base their currency on the U.S. dollar. It is considered the gold standard in the world. This would actually, I think they would get rid of the Federal Reserve. I think we would be back to a balanced budget. I think the federal government would stop going into debt. There's a out of the states, 44 states have a balanced budget amendment as part of their state, either constitution or state law. So right now, the federal government is running deficits. I think that would all stop. And the federal government, I think we pay off all our debts. It would take a little while, but maybe not as long as people think. And it'd be the U.S. dollar would return to being a very, very stable currency. There'd be a period of deflation, which some economists fear. Deflation is a consequence of capitalism. Okay, deflation happens because of competition in the marketplace. If I figure out a way to make a widget cheaper, you darn right I'm going to price my widget cheaper than yours, because then I can sell more than you. And so that's just a natural part of capitalism. Is you're always trying a way on how to be doing the same thing for less cost. If in our country we have Walmart, but we also have Sam's Club, which is also part of Walmart. Sam's Clubs, you go in there and you have to buy stuff in bulk. Just there's no single issue thing. It's like, you want a piece of candy? Okay, well, here's a box of candy. Okay, we're going to give you a cheap price on it because we're not breaking it apart and selling you one by one. We're going to sell you in bulk. That's just capitalism. And so I think the states would probably kill off the Federal Reserve, but that's a private corporation. It's not part of government. The Treasury Department is probably what a lot of people think is the Federal Reserve, but the Treasury Department just prints the money. The dollar bills, the coins. That's what the Treasury Department does. It has Fort Knox, where we keep our gold. One of the places that we keep our gold is not all of it. The U.S. keeps their gold in lots of different locations. There's a James Bond movie that James Bond, Dr. Goldfinger, where he goes and he's going to take the gold in the federal in Fort Knox. There's gold reserves all over America. They're at the bottom of what we call Federal Reserves in those areas. But anyways, would that still exist? Yes, I think, but it'd be different. Just like the Defense Department. Right now, America is the global policeman, and there's a lot of people in America that do not like that. America is pretty isolationist, to be honest about it. Our federal politicians aren't, but American people, we were dragged kicking and screaming into World War I, kicking and screaming into World War II. We just want to be left alone. By and large, we love that there is an Atlantic on one side and a Pacific on the other. There are a lot of Americans that would like to shut down a lot of our overseas military bases and bring those soldiers home. There's a lot of Americans that don't want to be involved in wars. Trump is one of them. He has promised that if he gets reelected, the Ukrainian war will be ended within 24 hours.
You think the
And that's
election
simply
was
because
stolen?
we're what?
Do you think the election was stolen given the voting counts?
Well, if you read the history of American politics, there's always been shenanigans. Always have. John F. Kennedy did not win the popular vote. There's a district in Chicago that voted 110% for John F. Kennedy. 110% of the voters voted for John F. Kennedy.
That's mad.
They went into graveyards and they went into the graveyards and got the names of the dead and had them vote for John F. Kennedy. That's the Daley machine. The Mayor Daley, he had a machine. So there's always been shenanigans. There's always has been. If you want to, some people say, "Oh, this is such a contentious presidential election." Read up what happened with the first real one, which was between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. You want to talk about dirty politics? You want to talk about mudslinging? Was it stolen? Yeah, maybe. I'm not. I didn't clutch my pearls and go, oh my God, there's shenanigans going on. Of course there is. But part of the problem is that Republicans didn't counter it. If one party cheats, you got to call them on a cheat. And this next election, what happened in Pennsylvania, it ain't going to happen again. But to be honest about it, my personal feeling, I think it was a grand thing that Trump didn't win re-election. Because I believe he's a good hand grenade. Our country needs a hand grenade right now. He's been out of office for 4 years. He's going to be reelected. I'm a libertarian. I'll be voting libertarian unless he makes Rand Paul, which is a libertarian U.S. senator, his VP. I'll be voting libertarian. If he makes Rand Paul his VP, I'll vote for Trump. But him being out of office for 40 years, I think is fantastic because now when he gets reelected, he's had 4 years to think what those next 4 years are going to be. He has plans. You listen to him day one. This is what I'm going to be doing. So he has plans of everything he's going to do once he gets back in office. I mean, if I could have magical control over our whole system, I would have that no president can. I would have one. Presidents can serve more than 2 terms, but I would say they cannot serve 2 consecutive terms. In other words, they can serve 4 years, then they have to be out of office for 4 years, and then if they can get reelected, they can come back in 4 years. I think that would be they can then have like what Trump has right now. He has had 4 years to think about what he's going to do next, and he's been in office. He knows what he can do, and so when he comes in the next 4 years, it's going to be that administration, his administration, when he comes back in, is going to have a running start.
I think that you should be able to do more than 2 terms consecutively, but the threshold for votes would have to be a lot higher. Because if it's just a very marginal difference, it's not really fair on the major minority basically who don't want that to continue. Whereas if I think you go for a 75% vote, then it's saying that we're really happy with this guy, we love where he's going, and we'd like him to do another term. The reason I say that is because what can happen with 2 terms, by the time it's only 8 years, by year 1 or year 2 of the next president, or whoever it's going to be, party, you want to call it party, you've reversed a lot of the work that's done over those 8 years. Whereas when it's 12 years, because a lot has changed, it's a lot harder to reverse the progress that's been made over a short time frame, if that makes sense. That's my view anyway.
Well, I mean, I can see logic to that. I can also see people, we don't have a referendum on the president. He runs against candidates. If there was a referendum, unlike with your system, a vote of no confidence is in Parliament. That's how one of the ways you can change the leadership of Parliament. We don't have a vote of no confidence. We have our version of vote of no confidence would be an impeachment, to impeach the president. But we have never in our history ever kicked a president out of office. We came close with Nixon, but he resigned. and he made Gerald Ford the president. We've had Trump has been impeached. Clinton was impeached. Probably George Bush was impeached. It's meaningless now. It's just you know, oh, you're not nice. We don't like you. Um, it, I don't know. That would change. That would be another whole thing. I mean, my amendment would have nothing to do with that. My amendment would it just reforms. Basically, it gets the states to go, what can we handle at the state level, and what is something we should handle together at the federal level.
What would these what would these changes in terms of solutions, what do you think these changes would really solve in terms of problem? What are you hoping to see a future?
It'd be the federal government reduced down to just the Department of Defense, state, and Treasury. The federal laws would only deal with those issues. The Department of Education, Federal Department of Education would be gone. The Federal Department of Interior, which is what state parks, preserves, reserves, would be gone, because the states all have that. All the states have state parks, state preserves. There's county parks, county reserves. It just gets rid of this federal layer, and makes us think, well, what can be done? What should be done at the federal level, and what can we handle at the state level? And so it gets rid of a lot of duplication, a lot of there's a federal law for everything. There's a state law for everything. This would get rid of those federal laws. There's no state laws when it comes to national defense. Those are federal laws. There's no state laws when it comes to international diplomacy. Those are federal laws. There's no state laws currently about the printing of our money. Those are federal laws. And those would remain federal. But everything else that can be duplicated at the state level would be done at a state level. And it just makes the federal government much more slimmed down, focused. The president is in charge of defense, diplomacy, and our currency. And that's about it. The rest can be handled at the state level. And what happens is, well, right now in the federal government is one size fits all. So they pass a law in DC. That law is for all 50 states. And our country is so massive. I've had friends from the United Kingdom come over, and when they're coming over, they say, "Oh, I want to go and see Washington D.C. I want to see Statue of Liberty. I want to see Disney World. And I want to see the Grand Canyon." And they're coming for a week, and I'm like, "Oh, pick one," okay? Because I don't think a lot of Europeans understand how massive the United States is. Think of Europe. We're bigger. Okay, yeah. We're wider. You guys kind of like thin. We're thick. And that doesn't even talk about Alaska. Or Alaska is like 5 times the size of Texas. And Texas, if you drive from for your UK audience, to you guys, 2-hour drive might be considered a long drive. In America, you can drive at the speed limit of 65 miles per hour, which I don't know what it is in UK and kilometers, but something.
We use miles per hour as well.
So when you could drive in the state of Texas for 12 hours at the speed limit and not leave Texas. Okay. So I mean that's one state. Okay. You can do this. It would take you longer to drive from the top to the bottom of California. So we literally have swamps. We have snow-capped mountains. We have hurricanes. We have tornadoes. We have earthquakes. We have blizzards. And then each of our states have different pluses and minuses. I am from Wisconsin. We're agricultural. In Wisconsin, we do dairy. 95% of all milk created in Wisconsin is made into cheese, and we export it. The biggest milk producer though is California, but they just make it for they're drinking their milk. Okay, they have cheese, but it's not as the same way. So I think each state is very different from each other, and I think their problems they're better able to handle it the closer you are to the problem. and that's what I think my amendment would help bring about. I don't believe one size fits all ever works. It can. One size fits all works fine for a national currency. There's a logic to it. Okay. One size fits all makes sense for international diplomacy, having one person represent the United States to other countries. One size fits all when it comes to national defense. But even within national defense, there are national guards, which are essentially state guards.
Yeah.
And in our country, when we have a natural disaster, hurricanes in Florida, blizzards and tornadoes in the Midwest, earthquakes in California, the governors activate their National Guard and go out and service that. Yes, they are they are also soldiers that will fight in war, but in my country, National Guards are viewed as when shit hits the fan, these guys show up and take care of it. Um, they're not police. They're not police. When they take over, they have big signs: looters will be shot. They're
Yeah.
not going to arrest you. They're just going to shoot you because they have. If the National Guard has been activated in the state, the shit has hit the fan, and they're having to deal with it. They're in the Midwest. We have the Mississippi. We have flooding, and you'll see National Guards going out there rescuing people stranded on their rooftops because everything's flooded around them. The ones that come and get them are the National Guard. They're the ones that restore dams. They're the ones when real riots occur, they're activated and they go and deal with it. And they're not cops. They don't deal with it as cops. They deal with it as soldiers. So typically in our country, when rioting occurs, it really occurs because only police are handling it. But once the National Guard is activated, usually all the riots stand because they know that they're not going to mess around. They're not going to play patty cake with them. They're just going to shoot them because that's how the soldiers are trained. So, I mean, I think it'll slim down the federal government. It'll get it focused on what it should be. And now think of that. And now you're president. You're not trying to solve everyone's problems. You're focused on defense. You're focused on diplomacy, and you're focused on a stable currency. And I think that will help that because so many countries like Argentina, the guy that just became president down there, he wants his currency pegged based on the U.S. currency. And I think the better that the U.S. currency it becomes, the better it is for the world as a whole, because it becomes a more stable currency.
But well, I think most currencies are pegged to the dollar anyway. They have like the UK is basically there's a spread of the euro, Japanese yuan, dollar, etc. that's pegged. You've also got the fact that you've got petrodollar as well, which means that people need to keep dollar reserves. As you said, it is a reserve currency. So all of these things keep the dollar.
Yeah, that's to Americans, they're very confused by foreign countries. There's a report in our country where they show a country, just another country, having pallets of U.S. dollars, $100 bills, and that's what they keep in their country. And America's like, why? And why are you taking our currency? A lot of Americans are upset when they see that. Hey, that's our currency. And it's like, no, this is a good thing. It's sometimes hard for Americans they want that money returned. It's like, why are you keeping our money? And then no, that's a good thing. Don't worry about it. It's actually better than gold in a lot of cases. It's also far more transportable than gold. I mean, gold had, I mean, I don't know if anyone thinks that gold is easily transportable. I just go and try a brick of gold. It will be, your viewers will think that will be enough to handle. Superheroes can carry bricks, plural. Humans carry bricks of gold. So it's just an easier currency. It's just, yeah, it is what it is. My amendment just makes it, I think it'll actually make the US dollar stronger. I think it'll cause deflation worldwide. Some economists are afraid of that. I'm not. If you are a pensioner, you should hope for deflation. You should hope for deflation because you're living on savings. If you're a borrower, you want inflation because you want the dollar, you want the currency to devalue because that means what you borrowed, you can pay. It's easier for you to pay off because the value of that dollar shrinks. That currency shrinks. It's easier to pay off. So lenders, and that's what created the Federal Reserve was created by major lenders who wanted to make money easy. They want to socialize debt. Um, I think that will be stopped with my amendment. I think, again, 44 of 50 states have balanced budget amendments or balanced budget laws. That will finally have a balanced budget. Federal government will run a balanced budget, and that will cause deflation worldwide. So if my amendment happens, okay, if my amendment happens, I'm not a financial advisor. Do not take financial advice from me. But saying it were to happen, what could happen is that worldwide there would be a worldwide deflation because the borrowing of money by the U.S. would stop, and the dollar would. So if you're a lender, pay off your. If you are a borrower, pay off your debts. If my amendment is added to the U.S. Constitution, and if you have money, if you're a retiree, my amendment is the best thing could ever happen for your pensions because your dollar. Well, whatever you will be able to buy more with your dollars or pound. Pound is what you're
Yeah.
back to the pound, right? You're no
Yeah.
longer with the euro.
We will never
And the
would
euro,
be
that thing's good. Yeah, and European Union is just collapsing as it is now. I think what Poland's planning to pull out of it. Anyways, so you know, it is what it is.
So let's say you've implemented your state amendment, you've made some changes into how the country operates, and let's say today was the day that change was implemented. Let's say all of your points were implemented, it was agreed, and a new president started today. What do you think the results would be over the next 4 years if you could just pick three key results that you think would happen?
Massive worldwide, because the U.S. currency is, a lot of countries are based their currency on U.S. currency, and because we're the strongest economy in the world, and most stable economy in the world, there would be worldwide deflation. Worldwide deflation would occur. That would be for UK. I'm assuming you're saying, well, how would it affect the UK? It would be deflation. You'd have deflation. So if you're borrowing money, get out of debt quick, because that debt is going to increase in value, not decrease. Um, and then start saving, because every time your pound will increase in value because of deflation. So it is a saver's paradise. Another change would be, well, another change worldwide would, I think that we would be pulling out of we would stop being the global policeman. I think a lot of our overseas bases would be shut down because it's safe to say bring those soldiers home. I think you'd see a less, one, foreign aid by U.S. would stop. I don't think the states could justify giving our money to other countries. I think foreign aid would just stop. If you got money if this amendment were to happen and the changes were to occur, I think U.S. foreign aid would just come to an end. It'd have to be a rare situation, that the federal government would then send money overseas, and we'd probably be very hesitant to be in any foreign wars. We'd still have our military would still be as powerful. I think, even though we would have less overseas military bases, I think that we would still keep our 11. We have 11 aircraft carriers. That's required by law in the U.S. to have that the U.S. has 11 U.S. carriers. I don't think that would be reduced. So if we want to project our military power, well, as we do today, we project with our aircraft carriers. We send over, if you're a bad character, we send an aircraft carrier over saying, dude, we're watching. Here's this, we don't need a country. That's a floating air base right there. So I don't think if that would happen. I don't know. I think we'd probably get rid of the UN. I think the UN would be kicked out. I think the US would leave the UN and kick it out of the country. We've never liked it. It's also just a dictator's social club. China is on the Human Rights Committee. China, the one that is currently doing genocide, is on the UN's Human Rights Committee. It's a joke, and the U.S. doesn't give a shit. And here's the truth, man. The U.S. doesn't give a shit what the rest of the world thinks. We really don't give a shit. We don't care what the UN says. Oh, we have a resolution against the United States. Yeah. The truth of the matter is the U.S. just goes, we don't care. What are you going to do? Right now, we're so... Just leave us alone. That's really... the U.S. is an isolationist. We will go back to being more isolationist, I believe. Our world interaction will greatly decrease. It might not, but I really think that the days of saying billions and billions and billions of dollars to other countries will be over. I believe us starting. Biden has started in his 4 years. He's starting his fourth war. His fourth war. No American wants that, except for, of course, the makers of weapons. They want that. That's a heyday for them. Trump, when he gets in, he shuts down wars. And when he was in presidency, he was the first president, I forget how long, that didn't start a new war. He shut down wars. He just didn't. He came with a businessman's attitude, not politicians. Obama said that ISIS is going to be a forever problem. Trump got in office, ISIS is no more. Okay. Biden said that stagnation was going to happen. We're going to have to get used to it for a very long time. Trump got in office, our economy roared. So, the three big changes as far as the world is concerned, there will be massive deflation because the U.S. dollar will gain in value. If my amendment happens, get out of debt and start saving money, because that is how you're going to have financial well-being. Foreign aid will come to a halt, screeching halt. And I don't think America is going to be much of a policeman anymore. Someone else is going to have to take a role. Maybe United Kingdom. By the way, the United Kingdom could have been, the British Empire could still exist today. The only thing they had to do was give representation to their colonies. And that's all. The American colonies, if you gave representation to us in Parliament, we'd still be a member of you. That's what a battle cry in our American Revolution was no taxation without representation. We sent Benjamin Franklin, and what you guys did, you publicly dressed him down. Now I know the real reason why you guys didn't give the colonies representation, because if you gave us representation, all the rest of the colonies will have asked for representation in Parliament. And there's this tiny, tiny country called India, okay, who, if you had to give representation by population, the British government, the British Parliament, the British Empire would then become the Indian Empire for all essential purposes. It would switch from being the British Empire to the Indian Empire. And I believe that's the real reason that Parliament didn't give representation to the colonies, was because they knew if they gave to them, all their colonies would demand it, and India would have demanded it. And then if they gave it to India, it's no longer the British Empire, it's the Indian Empire, because it's by population.
Yeah.
Now, would that have happened? It would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. There's one last section of my there's our sections to my amendment. Washington D.C. is no more. There's no purpose for it. I have the president go around and visit every state once a year physically. So every state would demand that there's 52 states. I mean, there's 52 weeks. There's 50 states. Every state would demand 1 week of his time. There's the Congress is no more because they're telecommuting from their state. So DC is shut down, stripped of its federal status, and returned to the state of Maryland. The lobbyist paradise is no more. And then my last section, it gives a way for countries to join the United States, but makes it very hard for them to join. A country wants to join the United States, they have to pass a referendum by 2/3 majority. A simple majority is 50% or a little bit more than 50%. A super majority is 60%. 2/3 majority is 66.666, infinity percent. So if another country want to join the United States as a state, they have to pass that referendum. Then they'd have to have everyone speak American English to at least an 8th grade level, which is what all newspapers are written at. They're written at an 8th grade level. And then they'd have to, after proving that they have 2/3 of the population can speak English to an 8th grade level, then they have to pass another referendum by 2/3. And then in the last sentence of that section is that if a state or a territory wants to leave the United States, it only requires a simple majority and they can leave. So it makes it really hard to join the United States, but very easy to leave. I think that's a good thing. In America, we have this phrase called love it or leave it. And so here's a way for them to leave it if they don't like it. Do I think the whole rest of the world would join the United States? No. Do I think any country would join the United States? Yeah, probably there might be one or two. It's really hard to join the United States this way, but it gives them, in the United States history, how territories became states is just dirty politics. Just if you read how there's the Missouri Heel, if anyone wants to look up the state of Missouri, if you look at what the state, there's a little part that's called the Missouri Heel that was added to Missouri simply because of one guy in dirty politics. The state of Utah, which used to be a gigantic territory, and now with the state of Utah is what remains of the Utah territory, and we have in our Constitution freedom of religion. But when Utah begged to be a state, they said you had to outlaw polygamy. Well, polygamy is part of the Mormon faith, and that's who is in Utah. The Mormons are in Utah, and they did. And now, but right now you see reality shows, sister wives, polygamy is still there. The last section just takes the dirty politics of how to become a territory and how to become a state out of it. I think some countries would Ukraine maybe, and then that would end the war. If Ukraine became a state of the United States, what is Russia going to do? No, they're gonna run for the hills.
So where can people? So these are all the arguments for your state amendment, and if so, where can people read about all of these? Is this all in your
right now? Well, there's no book. It's just one website with one page. This just gives out the amendment. Right now, I'm just taking a relaxed attitude towards this. If they want to learn, go to Twitter. Is my handle on Twitter is @Jack T. Decker, and follow me there. That's really the only way. It costs nothing. I have a major YouTuber who has tens of millions of subscribers who will have me on if my ex-followers get to 1 million. And I also help with the press, dealing with the press, showing interest in it. So if you follow, you don't have to be in favor of it. If you just want to follow the progress of it, I post all links to every podcast that I've been on that have sent me links to that. So I tweet it out. I right now have not many. It's just barely less than 1,000, but that'll grow. And so if you want to go there, if you go to my Twitter profile, there's a section called posts. And in that section, I post mainly the links to all the podcasts that I've appeared on, so you can listen to how I've talked about this and the different questions, different places I've had. I post I don't censor it. If I've had some really bad podcasts, um, really hostile ones, but I still post their link, and I just tell people, here it is. The current one is having a really good response. I see when anyone retweets to us, and that podcast, I see a lot of retweeting of his podcast, and also people dig into it. You can go back. I'm becoming better of a guest, you know, but that's what they can do. That's about right now the only thing they can do. I need to show public interest. I'm letting this organically grow. I'm on podcasts like yours, the Cutting My Teeth. When I've been on as many podcasts as I can be on, I'll go then to radio talk shows. When I'm on as many of them, then I'll go to TV talk shows. Hopefully, the mainstream media will then start paying attention to this. I think if this amendment has a chance of actually succeeding because it's a power grab by the states. It gives them more power. I think the U.S. Senate is actually going to be in favor of this because even though they quote, lose their job as U.S. senators, well, they've already won statewide elections. So the only thing they have to do is defeat the governor and become the new governor. And they've doubled their power in the U.S. Senate and became the governor. There are members of the House of Representatives like Wyoming, Montana, Alaska, who only have one vote in the House of Representatives, so they've won statewide elections, so they think they'll be able to take on their state governor. There's 50, what is it? There's 6 states with 1 U.S. House of Representatives, 7 with 2, 2 with 3, and 6 with 4. I think any one of those House of Representatives thinks they can take on their governor for more power. And also in our country, we have what's called a constitutional convention, and that's a threat that the states use. And they can call a constitutional convention without approval from Congress or the president and bring about amendments. So that way I think it has a chance, if it has a chance.
Fantastic. Well, you've given us loads to think about. I've learned a lot myself. If people want to reach out to you, is the website just the best place, in Twitter?
Yes, best place is, and they find a link to where I post the amendment commonly in replies to people whenever I can on Twitter. There's a link in my profile to where they can go and they can read the amendment. So I post it everywhere. I post a lot of places, but yeah, if you go to my profile, it's right in the description, my description, that my Twitter profile is dedicated to this amendment. That's the only reason I have a Twitter account, is for this amendment.
Fantastic.
I do tweet, other stuff until eventually, hopefully, there's enough momentum that I spend all my time just replying to tweets about the amendment and answering questions. Right, but right now I'm doing other stuff to draw attention. So
Excellent.
that's about it.
Well,
Thanks for having me on, though.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jack. It's been a great chat, and hopefully people do go and check your amendment out, because I think there is some valid points there. But thanks again, Jack.
Thank you very much.